Where will Leicester be? What's the ambition?
Well,
take each game as it comes.
No, mate.
We're going to win, mate.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, what a lot of people said about your signing is it's just so good for the league because things are going to happen.
I can be fire and brimstone. Not all the time. No, not really.
I don't believe you.
But not all the time. But I can show I've got another side.
You just shout and hit me. That's what you did.
Yeah.
That's why when you
You
came in, I was a
first
bit
or
like,
the last.
yeah. So please don't do it again.
It was like a flare. And you
flare,
were
wasn't
walking round the changing room at your players with a flare, on fire. You couldn't hear the audio, but essentially there was a lot of, you're fucking going to play for me today or else.
Players like it because you're prepared to look outside the box for a way to get a little edge.
Hello Dream Team, I hope you've summered well. Welcome along to a new campaign of the good, the bad and the rugby in partnership with our very good friends at Continental Tires, for whom safety, performance and grip is the name of the game, in stark contrast to this absolute shambles of a show that somehow has made it back for Season 5. Buckle up, kiddo.
We have a great season ahead, culminating in a Lions tour to Australia next June. But for a little pre-season tickle, we are here at the Mattioli Woods, Welford Road Stadium, to talk to an old boss of mine.
Absolutely we are. It is the biggest club in the country and he is one of the biggest coaches in the game, a man who has been to work in both Union and League, a man who's won the Celtic League, Super Rugby, the Heineken Cup, as was. He's taken Australia to a Rugby World Cup final. He's been a former World Rugby Coach of the Year and now he takes on the Tigers.
Can you guess who it is yet? It's Michael Cheika, of course.
Let's go and find him. Welcome everybody inside to the ABC Club and a very warm welcome on our first show of the season to the one and only Mr. Michael Cheika. How are you?
I am well. Thank you very much for the invite.
Thank you for having us in your new home. And there are so many things that we want to talk to you about. We love talking to the person rather than just about the game. But how is life? How have you ended up here from Paris with a number of options? What has got you to the Midlands?
After it was decided I wouldn't go on with Argentina, we were still living in Paris. We were living in Paris that whole time in France, and a little bit longer even from before that, so probably 3 years or so. And we made a decision more for our kids. We got 4 kids. I've got 4 kids. They're still at school.
Yeah.
Late starter.
Aren't we all?
How old are your kids?
The eldest is 15, and then I've got 2 14s and an 11.
Wow.
Yeah, so they've been, I think my wife wanted them to have an Aussie school experience. They hadn't really done it. I sent them to a French school in Australia as well.
Okay.
I wanted them always to have another language. So they did that. And then they came to school in France as well. And I think they wanted them to have that experience of going to an Aussie school and, go to the beach in the morning, go to school, then come back home, go to the beach and, hang out with your family and all that, which they'd never really had. So we sort of agreed to go back. I then started, obviously, having had a bit of experience in league, was looking more at league because I didn't think rugby was much of an option back there. So I was looking more in league and started getting involved. I had one interview with a club, and then I just got a call out of the blue from here, and obviously it gave me an idea of what they were thinking with the previous coach, and I said, look, I would love to. The timing is okay because I'm not doing anything. And I've never, ever organised anything when I've been in another position.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right thing to go, the way to go. You got to be all in. And I spoke to my wife and she said, look, why not? So I said, yeah, I'll come. I think that sometimes you just got to take the opportunity when it's there in front of you. And I thought it's something that I thought about over many years, never got the chance to do. And I get to experience the Prem as well, which I haven't done. So, yeah, why not?
So then the big armoured car full of cash came to the house. You opened the door, checked it over and went, that'll work.
Well, if that was the case, then I probably would have said yes quicker. Yeah. But no, mate, I'm not a cash man.
No.
I do it for the love.
That's like having a good joke. I do love looking around, yeah.
No, even when rugby went pro, I sort of chose not to stay working with it where I was working and then start business. I think I didn't do it intentionally at that time, but it's given me the ability to stay, not to compromise myself as a coach. The pressure that could come on you, I imagine if you're coaching and you're paying your mortgage with the salary and all that. So I've always been able to keep myself independent in that way. So try to make the right decisions for the team and then understand if I went against owners or federation that the consequences are there, and they could take them. So that's fine too. And I've always been proud of that.
You have lived in Paris and coached in Sydney and Buenos Aires and Dublin, amongst others, Japan as well. Are you living in a travel tavern on the outskirts of Leicester? What is the setup in Leicester compared to where you have been?
Well, I was in a pretty nice joint in Paris, like a way.
Champs-Élysées.
I think it could have. No,
Okay.
that's not me. I'm not going with all the bling. No, I'm going a little bit more. I've got a place in the middle of town.
Yeah.
In an area called Montorgueil, but we decided to go out to just on the outskirts with the kids' school. So to go there for the school, and Louveciennes it was called. So it's near a place called Saint-Germain-en-Laye. So
Okay.
well, I'm not going to big no, right? There was more than 3 levels of that house. So
And a lift,
that
and
was
staff,
cool.
underground
No,
car
no,
park.
no lift. That was the problem.
You
Right.
earned it, mate. You did it. I love it. Talk it up.
And we had a great experience there. And then here, I've sort of back to my roots. I'm on the run. I'm in a hotel. Some nights I move to another hotel, generally packing up my suitcases, moving to another place. Because I haven't been able to, I haven't really worked hard enough to get a place yet. Haven't really been on the lookout. And because I've been very focused on the footy. From day one, from when it happened, I had a week to get ready for pre-season. So to catch up with the S&C chief, and then came here, got that started for a couple of days, and took the family back to Australia, and then came back and have just been ripping into it ever since.
And you have bought the Tigers car. What have you found under the bonnet now that you're getting into it?
It's been interesting. I feel like there is a lot of potential there, a lot of players that I didn't know, and a lot of players I did know that I never knew intimately, you know what I mean, and start to get to know as players that I'm involved with, some that have been the thorn in my side, as England players against Australia.
Yeah.
And now I've got to know them and starting to build that connection, which I think is very, I don't like to say the word cool, but it's a real thing about rugby that you can get to do, where you can be mortal enemies with someone, and then for some strange reason you end up on the same team, and then you become like compadres, and I'm quite enjoying that process in being involved with some of the guys and maybe opening up the game a little bit more for them, or their involvement in the game and how the game plays out, and just changing a few little bits and pieces, not too radical too early, because I want to understand a place with a strong tradition. I think you need to take the time to understand how things have been done and what things should still be done and what things need to change.
I wonder with you, obviously being at Leinster, for that part of the world, everyone kind of was so passionate about it. But what I found when I played in Northampton as opposed to playing for Wasps was I found a town that was based around a particular team. And Northampton in particular with, the Saints. Here, obviously, you've got the football club. But the passion here sells out every time. How have you found sort of walking around? Have people stopping you? Because there's some big rugby kit. You'd be surprised. Like, I know obviously you have a profile, but it's amazing when you come here. You think you're going to be anonymous, but everyone's got an opinion, and I wonder whether a lot of advice. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. We've had a couple of games here at home in the pre-season, and I've had a couple of whispers from the guys sitting almost in my seat behind me, and they're here for the whole season ticket holders. So I'll be calling them for advice on a regular basis about what we should be doing on the attack or on the defence. But mate, I got to be honest, I love that closed-in environment. With I come from a club where in Australia, when club rugby back there was big, that was very much like that. We had a group of experts. They knew everything that was going on, and a strong identity around the club. Ours was more around running, playing a running style of game. And there's a real clear feeling amongst the supporters, and you can feel it straight away. It's a fundamental part of great footy clubs, the connection between the fans and the team, and that the fans understand the identity of the team just from the way they play. No marketing slogans, no website thing, none of that. Just, I want to be a part of this team because of the way they play the game.
Do you do your business kind of almost due diligence like you would do in another area of your life? Would you go and read up a bit of the history? Would you look into it? Do you like to do it? Or Or do you want to, because you said not turning out with any preconceptions in regards to players, meeting new players, but I wonder as a club, especially like this, the first thing I would do is I'd go and read the history. I'd just try to understand a bit more about it because, for certain clubs, it's so important, isn't it? It's very, did you do all that kind of homework?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of still doing it.
In your little travel lodge with a pot noodle and a little...
Well, the pot noodles don't know. Yeah. They've got that thing called Uber Eats now.
Sorry. It doesn't really work anymore.
Every night. That'd be one of the sponsors, wouldn't it? You'd be on there.
I wish I was.
Yeah.
You are available to sponsor.
I imagine that was
I'm in the divorcee's house at the moment, so I'm literally not a lot of cooking going on.
No, I think that's super important, mate. To understand, how the club has... how clubs been formed over the years, and in the training centre, there's a lot of the photos around, and obviously photos are a brilliant way of provoking questions about what happened in the past. Well, there's a historian at the club as well who can give you, what historians are like. They can give you adequate background to what's going on and the reason why things happen. And I know a lot of players who have played here, coaches who have coached here, strength and conditioning coaches who have been here, and it's good to get a picture because there are some things that don't change. There's some things that come with the territory, and then other things, mate. To coaching in different countries, like research on, let's say, how do kids go to school here, because how kids go to school here are very different to how kids learn and go to school in France, and same Argentina and Australia, and basically that habit that they would have got from learning will be applied when they're learning from us. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to teach them and get them through and try to teach them some new things, give them some strategy on others and help them to become better. So doing it in a way that works for English people and the way that they've come through their schooling is very important.
How do you find... Can you give an idea of what's it like coaching Argentinians? What do you have to do with them? What would you have to do with the French? And what have you seen you'd have to do with the English? I think that's a really interesting point.
Well, mate, put it this way. When I went to Stade Français, it was a bit of a last minute thing, right? I'd finished at Leicester. I could have stayed on there. I decided to have a break, and I was going to Paris to have a break. The twins were about to be born, so we said we'll go for a year in Paris, take it easy, and then see what happens. When I got there, they fired the coach not long after I got there, and it was in fact the Argentinian contingent who played there, Roncero, boys like that came to me through the connection with Payno from Leicester to say, would you come coach a team? And that's probably the one place where I didn't do that due diligence around that because I didn't have the time.
No.
On the club or anything, and you know what happened at the club. But now I remember saying to my wife, now that my kids have been to school in France, if I went back and coached in that team again, I would do it so differently.
Oh, really? Would you?
Oh, yeah.
What way?
Well, because I understand a little bit more about what happens, the way they learn, the very rote nature of their schooling. Every week's a test result. The nurturing of kids inside of the school system, like maybe you get in Anglo-Saxon schools, it's not there. Not in it's much more. It's hard for the kids there. They've got to battle through, and they're under pressure from the teachers, and it's always about a score each week to get you to a certain place. No school sport. You never kitten up in your school. It's about, you have school sport, but it's like, I'll run around the athletics track. We're never in the same kit going to play for our school and our team. And in fact, no uniforms at school. In fact, they're having that debate right now over there about whether they should go back there, about their whole education system. And
would that mean you'd have to put, when you're players, would you put your arm round them more, or would you try to be more like test them and
It's a strategy that you've got to decide to go down. Which I don't think I went down either of those roads. I sort of went in, tried to do it like I would do Anglo-Saxon, whereas
you just shout and hit me. That's what you did. That's why when you came in, I was a bit
like, last.
I was like, please don't do it again.
Somewhere in the fetal position when I came
I was like
before.
panicking and crying. PTSD.
No, I think you can go one way and try and shock them one way with the more arm around, because they wouldn't have been used to that nurturing approach. I think they respond more. You see the coaches on the sideline screaming and yelling and carrying on. You can see it.
Yeah.
And that's a very much a you say I do, sort of more rote learning style mentality, as opposed to, come on, mate, let's get into it, you'll be right. That style. And I do think that it's changing over there. versus looking at it, like watching the game, the influence of more foreign players, obviously, and foreign coaches over there. But still, even foreign coaches who go there, a lot of them adapt that personality. If you look at Ronan O'Gara, he's coaching over there. He's down. He starts off up in the box, and he's down on the sideline, and screaming and yelling. And
do you find that? I've always found that. I think someone like with Ronan, his experience. Like sometimes when I used to watch, when I was playing, and you watch French rugby, that it was almost a bit of a pantomime. I felt sometimes with the coaches by the side, because you're sort of like, I like the coaches, but how much can you actually hear? Like you're sort of like, what? It's not for me. It's for the cameras, really. That's what I find that part.
More often than not, mate, it's for the coaches themselves.
Yes, exactly.
Like, sometimes coaches doing things just say, "Well, I've done coaching," right, as opposed to, "I've got what I wanted to get into that fella." And it's a total subconscious thing. I don't think anyone's bunging it on "Oh, I'm going to do it," so they're on me, but they feel that that's the way they'll get a response,
right?
And I think that they're sort of caught in that thing. Now, what way would I go? I don't think I could go that way. I think I would go the total opposite and try and show the difference between how you would have learned at school and how you will learn here in footy. I think that would be more my style.
And what about the Anglo-Saxon way? What does that look like for you?
Even when we talk about the Anglo-Saxon way, I think it's different between Australian Anglo-Saxons, for example, and English. There is a cultural difference between us, even though there are a lot of similarities around how you would, how they do learn at school, what the nature of learning is. And it can be sometimes also in the mentality that's passed down from generation to generation. There's much more history here, and there's much more provincial living. Yeah. So like here where I am now, small towns, it's not all big cities, whereas in Australia, if you're playing sport, often in the bigger competitions, you're playing inside of the suburbs of the big city. Different mentality again, and we don't really have a lot of that, or we don't compete that much against people who are coming from the rural areas or the country, because the middle of Australia is pretty much empty. So there is, again, a totally different feel around what's genuine, what's not genuine, how do I make that player, an English player, say, right, this guy's actually, like, he's true, like he's telling me what he really believes. It will be different pitch, a different way of showing that to perhaps an Aussie kid.
I wonder from when you coached me to where you are now with the different generation of these younger players, how have you found that as well? Because I imagine, again, the different approach, different use of language for different countries, but again, the kind of social media generation, the slightly more sensitive generation, again, that adds another layer of kind of, do you have to catch yourself sometimes and go, right, I need to do this in a little bit different way? Because I imagine being a coach now, it's not just about delivering your game plan. It is now a completely different. You've got that sort of partial care. You've got that bit to emotionally look after them. It's a very different world from when I was working with you.
Yeah, look, I think you've got to be multifaceted as I feel like I've always had that, even from my own upbringing. Ethnic kid in an Anglo-Saxon world, working class, playing rugby, which is the elitist game. Then playing rugby and, having a sort of persona that was quite aggressive and working for a fashion company or a fashion designer.
Such a nice juxtaposition, that, isn't it?
Yeah. And I quite enjoy that, So I think you got to have, and then you got to have layers so I can get to you, get to a different person, get to another style of player. So with the messaging and also with the private individual conversations, and show that I'm not just I can be fire and brimstone, but not all the time. No, not really.
I don't believe you.
But not all the time. But I can show I've got another side, they can, and I think that can surprise some guys. But then I can swap over, and I think sometimes, mate, with that whole new age type thing that we're talking about, sometimes that can become self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like if you don't show anyone else another way, well, then they'll end up that way.
Can I ask you about you? Because, it's absolutely fascinating. But to talk about you specifically, one of the things that's always been very apparent is that your teams and the players who you coach have a huge respect, love, affection for you. I'm sure there's some along the way, but we do a lot with Shane Horgan, and every time your name is mentioned, he literally comes alive. You talk so fondly of your time and talk about Michael as one of the best coaches you played under. I remember your team in 2015, I mean, they just had a smile from start to finish, almost. And then you had the music on the team runs, and it just looked an absolute party. I'm sure things have changed, but as a man, for those who are watching, what are Leicester players getting with this man at the helm?
Do you know what? I think we're coaching. You can sometimes put your best foot forward and try to be something or create an image or something. I think with Michael, my experience was a very genuine person that when you spoke emotionally, you would listen and would want to play for him. Yeah. I think the right combination of humour and aggression and that ability to communicate, particularly with me. I was I was a foreigner in a French side. I didn't, my teammate, Ollie Phillips, who checks nicknamed the accountant. He goes, mate, fucking hell, you've got a 50-year-old accountant running around. Where's your briefcase, mate? It's fucking the accountant, right? So Ollie Phillips is like old before his time, right? So he broke him. She comes and goes, the coach just called me an accountant. He thought I was 55, right? So I think
he played his best rugby.
Mate, he got a top try score, didn't he?
I think so. But I think if you you've got to, how you said about the all those things about respect. That's because I think I try, and I always try to give it to them.
Yeah.
The respect and love and care or whatever they need, because once you be part of a team together, you're in that's my feeling, you're in a team together. And even guys that I've had edgier relationships with in teams, and I've had a few, not a lot, a few over the years.
Can you share any of those which have become friendships outside of that team environment or not?
Like some players I could tell. It's not more. I think some players you're always going to have one or two that don't like you, or you leave them out, or something doesn't happen. And I always try to, even though I've known that and I've felt it, I've still always tried to go there because and build that relationship, even if it hasn't worked, because other players are counting on you doing that as well inside of the network. So if you're building that network in amongst all the players in the team and one's not buying in, at least then other players say, well, at least coach is trying, that player's not really buying into it. They might still be mates with that player, but they'll think they can get around it as opposed to, because they're all, no matter what, they're all your players, and that's what you got to do.
And when Michael speaks and he's passionate about it, you're like, fucking hell.
Didn't he used to step in at 10?
Yeah.
Are you still doing that or not?
This is the best. Before he bullshits out, right? This is like every session, right? You turn up, Stade Français t-shirt, same t-shirt, tracksuit bottoms, like tucked into his socks, get his boots on, right? This young French 10 would be in there. He'd be like, nah, mate, get out, push him out. He'd be there at fucking 10. He'd get the ball. He'd be like playmaking, or he'd snake hips, double dummy, swing, or he'd get the ball, he'd fucking shit past it and be like, mate, you got to fucking catch it. And you're like that. And then he'd like just be running up, trucking at people. And then someone would be like, when he's defending, he'd run. Someone would do him on the inside. He'd be like, mate, what the fuck are you doing? It was amazing.
I was never swearing that much. I can promise you.
It's amazing.
Are you bumping Pollard out of the way now and saying, I'll take
he's
this?
Not here yet, but I will when he gets here.
Quite right too.
It was pretty funny because when I first started, like when I went to Leicester, which is, I actually didn't know how I even got that position, right, considering my experience at the time. But anyway, I would have been 38. So I started jumping into training, like with the forwards, full on clatter. And I think they'd always been coached by school teachers before, like who were standing out there. And I don't think they knew what to do. Right. They didn't know whether to take me on or whether to go soft until Jamie Eastlip decided to put me away one day, like clean me up, knocked me over. He was only a young fella coming through. And then that was it. It was stacks on the mill. Every time I got near the ball, they were like,
yeah, but you'd love a league carry. He would take a little crash ball. He'd come up and there'd be a little bump. Like, he'd get you just a little late elbow. But then I remember that time after the session, he'd just get into me like, Hask, mate, I want to see if you can tackle, mate. Come and tackle me. And I was like, oh my God. And I think the first time, I fell off him a bit. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember it like eight times. The next day you couldn't walk. Do you remember? Like, yeah. He was like, but it was like, imagine that. One on the coach. And he's like, right, tackle me. And we're in a little grid. Like, first one, I sort of half hit him. And he was like, you could see him smiling. I was like, oh, fuck, I'm going to have to go it. Banging in one shoulder, other shoulder. Next day, he's like that. Need a hip replacement. It was, but just things like that. But again, I think, because I had 3 coaches in 1 year. That was the mental thing about Stade. I had Ewan McKenzie, I had Jacques Delmas and Didier Dudar, and I had
was a moment
and then Michael, and like I related to his form of training. The attention to detail, the requirement for extras. I was very lucky when I had Jamie Joseph at the Highlanders. Again, of all the coaches that I could have had, he was the most like a Premiership coach I had. aggression, demanded intensity, training, passion. Same thing with Michael, and it fitted really well in my thing, especially when the time I got the Ewan McKenzie, lovely guy, but they browbeaten him to the point where it was like, because it can wear you down. It can wear you down, the emotional there. Everyone becomes a politician at difficult times there. There's little deputations that come and speak to you, and there's always some sort of drama, and especially when it became emotional, you'd lose a game. Max is an amazing owner. Like, I love a rock and roll passionate owner, but coming in and kicking all the war balls and telling me all sons of bitches I'm going to tear a contract, that's a bit of an unusual thing. We didn't get that in the Premiership. And then much, you know what I mean? Much. And then, you know, to have that kind of coach, it worked perfectly for me. It was like oh, thank God, we've got some normality here. We've got some discipline. We've got some routine, and it worked for my kind of ideals, as opposed to just jouet, you know, which has its place, but doesn't always work when you're under pressure. Your scrum's falling apart, line's falling apart. You haven't got any structure, and no one knows what the fuck they're doing. Just shouting jouet doesn't really work, you know.
Do you think? Can I tell you a quick? I'm not sure if it's off the record or not, but I used to present the rugby at Sky, and in 2016, well, a very long time ago. I'm not sure I can, but in 2016 we did the Australia-England. I think it was 2016, and we were in studio. I think it would have been 8 o'clock in the morning up here. And you get the feed from Australia as you're preparing, etc. And we were all sort of having breakfast and so on. So I was like Michael Liner, Will Greenwood, and the feed comes in of the Australia changing room, and you are there. And tell me if I've got this wrong. With what is essentially it's something that you lit.
Flare.
It was like a flare, and you were walking round the changing room at your players with a flare, on fire. You couldn't hear the audio, but essentially there was a lot of, you're fucking going to play for me today, or else I will burn you.
He said he doesn't swear.
You will play for me today. And we were all like, what the hell is this? And we clipped it up, and it was sort of the first thing we were going to talk about, which is Cheika burns players ahead of kickoff. But the phone rang, and the ARU said, no, that's not to be used, and so we put it down. But I've never ever forgotten it as just a sort of, it just fits into, you know, what a lot of people said about your signing is it's just so good for the league because things are going to happen. Do you think about that kind of thing? Do you love the button pushing, or is it just in the moment? We've got to make, you know, we've got to get a reaction.
I think that being able to have a.
Is that true? That story first. Do you remember?
I do. I don't know if it was that game or if it was another game where we used it, and there was a theme behind it.
Okay.
That would have been running throughout the week or something. Whether they would have expected that on the day, or I probably prepared it and didn't say anything, and then I just decided if I was going to do it on the moment. Yeah, and try to make a point. I think often about like telling a story that can help players exceed where they think they can go. I think a lot of players put a ceiling on themselves, and often that's not an easy thing to get through by just approaching things technically.
Yeah.
I want them to be able to maybe believe a story that can get them to another place, and then they get there and they go, okay, hang on a second, like I can actually do this bit, so I'm going to go here and see if I can improve. And sometimes it's just, you want that extrinsic type of motivation and turn into intrinsic motivation. You want it to transfer across from, it's coming from the outside, so it's coming from the inside. And I know I can get to that level. So there's been a number of things over the years that, you know, I've done, some of them a bit crazier than others. But I feel like, I think the players like it because you're prepared to look outside the box or a way to get a little edge. You know, often in scenarios where you're probably not fancied to do well, or you're an underdog, which we often were in those games, the games that we played there, and even right back to Waratahs, even with Leinster, where a lot of that stuff we did, and theming of seasons, theming of different scenarios, because you want that storytelling. I think can help guys think through just the basics of the game. You know, how can I get to a higher level? How can I connect the emotion that I've got to actually playing the game and making it transfer onto the field?
You were always quite astute with your, like you said, harnessing different things. I remember the World Cup 2015. We played England, and I remember I was shocked, not involved, and I. So they did well, and I remember I walked up to the halfway line, and I was like, "How are you, mate? Good to see you." And you're like, "Oh, mate, do you want to thank Ben Morgan?" Do you remember? You were like, "Thank Ben Morgan." And I was like, "I don't know what." He goes, "Thank Ben Morgan." And Morgs had said something in the press Because you remember how he goes, mate, I thank you, mate, Ben Morgan. He's just giving us all the ammo. And I was like, what? So I ran off. I was like, what the hell is he talking about? And he said something about, I hope the Australians have nightmares when they close their eyes. Wasn't it?
Something about the scrum.
Yeah.
But then the reason I would have gone to you when you said, I would have said that to you because I would have known you were going to go and tell them, and that hopefully he'd hear it, and it'd get in his head, then it might get in someone else's head.
But it turns out, but no one used to speak to me, and I wasn't allowed anywhere near the team, so I didn't tell anyone.
Just your head.
I told them all afterwards, but it was a bit late then. You beat us and knocked us all out, and everyone got fired. And then I got a game against Uruguay, so thanks.
You won that one.
We did win that one.
Finest performance. How would you describe yourself as a coach? I mean, if someone would say Maverick or Andy Stat, is that lazy, or do you see a bit of that in yourself?
No, not Maverick. I'd say that.
But can you see that sort of
calculated?
Yeah.
But maybe not scared to, prepared to take a risk.
Because the question that follows on from that is, if you look at the big coaches of recent times, and you think, actually, even if you go back to Woodward in this part of the era, those that are not afraid, Woodward, Rassie, Gatland, you, Eddie Jones, there'll be a lot of others. Did you need that element of risk taking to be succsill?
But that's my personality. As a person, that's what I've always done. I think I'm lucky, like I said, ethnic family. When you're the youngest, when you're the baby, all the other kids have to go through the grief and you get a free ride. You're the most spoiled. You get looked after. You got the easiest trip through thanks to my parents and to my brother and sister who went before me. And I was not afraid to, I always think about my dad. He came to Australia 1950, arrived in Sydney, had nothing, knew no one. Probably knew never go back to see his family again, never get back in time to get, because it wasn't easy back then to get to and from, it cost and the time, and to start a new life with zero, with no, they took him, where are you from, mate? He said, where are you going to go? Oh, Lebanon. So they dropped him to the Redfern, where the local church, the Lebanese church was, and that's how he got to know about footy, because the Rabbitohs, South Sydney, had the field there at Redfern, and he was living in a boarding house just next to the field, so he got to know about it. Even though he never played, he was, of course, an expert, told me how to play his whole life.
He was, yeah.
Right? But, that risk-taking, you leave your family, your country, you go to start a new life, and somehow you make it. We were so well looked after as kids, even though they came from such working, modest background. And I always appreciated that about him, and my mum, obviously. It's about that I like the way he took that risk, and, if he can do that, I can do this easy.
It was a bit, because I remember you did tell me a couple of stories, because you've got a big scar, haven't you, where from your... back in the day, with some bloke was a bit of a, I won't say racially motivated, but it wasn't ideal.
Yeah, well, obviously there wasn't many, ethnic kids playing at that time or in the top grades. There was more and more starting to happen around there, but it was still, and I'm in no way complaining, right?
No.
That's so many people go through that, but when you go to a new country or whatever, like my dad was the one who came, and then we were brought up there, but with a different background, that hardens you up, that makes you ready. But no, that makes you, and I love it because I can have both nationalities. Yeah. I've even now been able to participate in the sport with both nationalities after going with the League World Cup and coaching the rugby league team for Lebanon. And I think it's just made me, even those harder things have made me better for it. I think that getting those types, having those scenarios occur, which were absolutely normal back then. It was nothing crazy.
Do you mind sharing what happened?
It was just different. If you were an ethnic kid, it was different growing up there, and then the opportunities in rugby were certainly much, much more different. And I probably got a reputation down there, that I didn't feel like I deserved, but there it was right there. So I always felt like you're on the wrong end of the stick, for one reason or another. And
in terms of just like physicality in games,
I think I just played hard. So, but then you get called a thug, or you get called this, or you get called that, and then that gets linked back to where you're from and how you came into the game. Because obviously I grew up playing league. Yeah. The school I went to played league, and literally, I played a bit of rugby. We played rugby on weekends sometimes. The school had some rugby, so we got to play with the school, but only in certain periods. It was a league school, and literally, I was busting to go overseas, even from when I was young, to travel and see what was going on. I thought Randwick played just down the road from where we lived, and I genuinely thought to myself, like, my brother played there, and I thought, oh, if I play rugby, I'll get a free trip overseas. Literally, that's how I started playing.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Not long I started playing in Colts, and then into the grade, and then in '89 I played Australian 21s at that year, and then I went and played at Castres. So back then, '89, still amateur. Played 7 months of the year over here, and then 5 months of the year back in Australia. Just played footy all year round for about 6 years.
Must have been gnarly back in the day.
It was hectic.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was. I got in so many fights, got kicked so
not part of
many
your reputation.
Is that why
times.
you came, or was that just part of the party?
Hey?
Did you come to test yourself in a...
Mate, I had no idea what was going on. I just wanted to go to France. I had no idea. These guys picked me up, drove me into the town. They didn't have to do anything. I said, yes, I'm coming no matter what. And then I actually flew, because they flew me over. I went and did the registration you probably had to do at the time. I didn't know what was going on. And then they flew me back. I played the semi-finals with my club in Australia in the finals, and then came back to play over here and just kept going in that cycle. So I had 2 years down there, a year in Paris with what was the club in second division, which was the club that Stade Français merged with. They have originally played at Jean-Bouin, the CHARMS, which is, I think, the team of the Société Générale, the bank. And then, because I wanted to live in Paris, so I went and did that. Then went back to Australia, then went to Italy for a few years and played there, and then went back to Australia, in the off seasons to play, in the European off seasons to play with the Australian, with my
Any
Australian
footage
club.
exists of you playing back in the day?
Yeah, I'm sure there is. Yeah, for sure. We with Randwick, we played in '88. Well, I just come into the team, so we played the All Blacks. So back then, All Blacks had to start the tour of Australia when they came on the tour with the team that won the Premiership, the local Premiership. They weren't happy about it either. So they rolled out the whole. They just beaten Wales by 50. It was like when that first started happening, that real domination. And I was shivering in my boots. Wayne Shelford.
I was going to say Shelford.
Yeah. The Wetton brothers. Yeah, Michael Jones played in that game. John Schuster. They had like Kevin Borovich. They had Sean Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
They had them all.
It's a hell of a team.
Yeah, it was a great experience.
What was your sort of USP? Was it?
I had a crack. I had a go.
Yeah.
Like I didn't mind the physical part of the game, but also I could handle myself playing in the wider or playing in tight as well.
Well, I've seen you try and stand up at 10. Let's not over-egg it.
Mate, I think that I've handled myself very well at
Yeah,
10.
listen,
I've played for 3 different countries. I've played for Australia. I've played for Argentina. All at 10.
This is true. You have, yeah.
Although sometimes you can come unstuck getting involved in training, because remember in 17 maybe, I don't know if it was 17 or 18, I was just standing there. We were training just before we went on the November tour, and I wasn't involved. I wasn't training, but they kicked a high ball. And I was talking to someone. I looked around, and it was coming down right on top of me. And I thought, hang on, mine. I called it. Next thing I knew, Izzy Folau had his knee up at head level, jumped over the top of me, caught it, knocked me over completely. I had to have full shoulder reconstruction. So I pretended there was nothing wrong, went off the training paddock, and then said, mate, this is killing me, the doctor. So I did tell the team. I had to go to the hospital. I left the day after them. So I got an operation nearly the next day or 2 days later. And then they left for the tour, and I went the day after because I didn't want to go on the plane with them because it was killing. And then I just didn't want to have it in a sling at all when I was on telly or anything like that. It was killing. Yeah, you got to stay out of the way.
That's Israel's a terrifying athlete. Oh my God! In terms of mate, that if I said if I had any player's ability, like you could absorb it, it would just be him, like his running, his power, his height. Imagine jump over his head, catch the ball.
Well, you see how the 2019 World Cup could have been very different if he was there. Yeah, you lose a player like that who can change a game on their own, and obviously there was a lot of that. The hectic stuff that went on with that in the lead up, which was quite. You talk about attrition, that was hardcore, but just not having him at the tournament was so costly.
Yeah. Can I ask you about Eddie?
Yes.
In many ways, you are the Liam and Noel of of rugby union. I'll let you work out which one's which. But
everyone's trying to help me get tickets to their thing, which I'm
need
good
to get tickets.
No, mate, but I like to leave it to the last minute.
Yeah.
No, you can't get too
You'd be
early.
right in the mosh
All the
pit as well,
guys
wouldn't
in
you?
there. Well, no, sweets.
They're doing it down just 10 minutes ago in Paris.
Mate,
You've got to do both.
Mate,
You got to be able to drink champagne
definitely
with the
working
king.
class, but he wants champagne and Dom Perignon.
Champagne with the king and a beer on the building site with the brothers.
He can't do that though. You can only do the champagne and afternoon
right.
tea.
Well,
He can't relate.
course
That's the
it's-
problem we've got. Is that, but he's got a lot of posh friends that are so posh. I can't understand.
Can we
Even
not
I'm
waste-
I'm
can we
quite
not
well
waste
to do.
valuable time on this
So he has to
nonsense?
translate for them, but he can't relate. You know, and I think I can go on a building site and chat. I'm mainly because I love the diggers and stuff like that. I'd have to speak for you. I go, my very posh friend over here would like to say this, but he can't because he doesn't want to get his shoes wet, muddy. You know what I mean?
Do you still speak to Eddie? Do you still see him?
Yeah,
Did you
look,
message him after everything that happened?
I spoke to him at that, contacted him at the time because it was pretty hardcore, just to say, are you okay, mate? Because I understand things didn't go well, and I can understand, mistakes were made, and you often feel the consequence of those, but that's hardcore. You get your face put up on the screen, everyone's into you, booing, like your own people. I do understand, but I just wanted, this is how he's feeling, because he would have felt very alone. They're he's very proud Australian, and that would hurt him a lot.
Is he all right now? Is he enjoying Japan? Is he over it? Is it still
He's
burn a
okay,
bit?
yeah, I think he's okay. I don't think you'll get over it that easy. That wouldn't be easy to get over, but he's had a lot of other successes, so you can't be defined by just that one thing or just being a footy coach or just whatever, so he's happy there. I spoke to him a little bit because he took on Dave Kidwell, who was coaching with Argentina, came out of the Kiwi Rugby League player who came, who was with me at Argentina, and he took him on there, so I had a bit of a talk to him about that, and I've had different things with him. He came up and spent a bit of time with us actually before the 23 World Cup, when we were at the Rugby League World Cup. He came up to Manchester. He loves his league, so came to Manchester and he sat down with the coaches, and we had a good old time there, which was good. But look, I think he was always destined to end up in Japan, so yeah, I hope he does well there.
I was going to ask you something. You said about the lonely thing. It's very interesting because I remember I didn't really appreciate it because I've never been in that position. I remember getting on a bus after an England game, and I think it was we lost to Ireland in the Grand Slam. It was actually the last game I played. And I remember Eddie sitting at a bus and on the front of the bus and going through the thing, and it's very lonely because you're on your own there. And actually, with all the kudos when things go well, it is quite isolating. Do you when things haven't gone well for you, is it your family you turn to? Do you suddenly feel? Do you feel isolated? Does it ever worry you? Because I can imagine sometimes people always look for you for the emotional, how to feel and what to think. But when it doesn't go well, who the hell do you turn to and look to? And I think I saw that with Eddie once, just sitting on the bus. I know he's got Hiroka is an amazing wife, but it's still quite isolating, especially when the press are on top of you. I mean, how have you handled that, and what do you normally do about that kind of stuff?
Well, I'd be very autocritic, so I feel like I would always ask. That's why I never really struggled too much when I got asked difficult questions. I could fire up every now and then, but they're not questions I wouldn't have asked myself.
Fine.
And I think that, I can't go to Steph, to my wife or the kids for backup, because they're going to love you no matter what.
Yes.
Right? That's not
Not
about...
an objective opinion,
No,
is it?
you're
If
not
I
going
wanted
to
to find
go...
out, if I wanted to find out if I played bad, I'd ask my dad. If I wanted to hear I was amazing, I'd just ask my mum. And I was like, my mum goes, you did a great game. I was like, Mum, I missed 3 tackles. Well, you were great and I love you. You're like, Mum, this is all, yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and I want to share those times with them, the good ones, and I want to... But the bad ones, I feel like when it's tough or you lose, I want to take all that responsibility, and I would go through a process, that it's not a stretch, but it's something I feel like, being of Lebanese heritage, we have a thing called a maffa. So after someone passes away, you go to the local church hall or whatever, and the family sits up front, and all the people come from the town or from the village or friends, and they sit, they have tea and coffee. You're up the front, they come pay their respects, and they sit down. There's people making sandwiches and coffee, and and this goes for 2 or 3 days at different times, right? And I never understood it, never wanted to go as a kid. You got taken. And then the day I finally understood it, when I was sitting up the front, when my dad passed away. and I got to experience the support of people around me in a really emotional time. And I feel like I've been able to take that process a little bit for games that don't go well and say, right, mourn for a bit, right? And then you'll get supported, and then you'll bounce back and you'll be ready to go the next week because your team's counting on you to be ready to go.
Does the missus ever say, listen, Michael, you're a bear with a sore head, come on, don't bring that home? Or are you quite good at compartmentalising? Do you ever have that?
No, I would be, it's not good for her, like, you know what I mean? But I'm lucky because I've got, wonderful wife who I think, like, you've only got to see her at the games, like crazy.
Oh, really?
Screaming, yelling,
I've not
support
ever seen her.
her.
I mean, I met her a few times. She's all
like as a supporter.
She loves it.
Yeah,
Oh, fine.
and obviously those times can be conflicting. Like if I'm, even for the kids, when I went to coach Argentina, like I said to the kids, when we played Australia, like, it's okay if you guys want to go for Australia, you can go for Australia. But my missus, she's like, no way, I'm with you. That's it. That's all there is to it, Like, she's not even, she's not flinching a second there,
But I think it's amazing. Because again, I think being a head coach and being hard with all the stuff that comes with the media and everything else, having a strong rock with that ability to kind of support you and back you, but also know when to read you. Because it's worse thing you're fighting the team, fight the media, and then going home and finding someone who's not being there. I think that's such an amazing.
They have a knack of. I think there's something about that emotional intelligence that keeps you level with your partner. Because you go home and you're a big dog and everything, and they'll drag you down straight away and put you in your place. And you go home and you're feeling down, and they'll bring you up and make you feel. And that gives you that balance, that you're able to equilibrate your emotions and your feelings immediately, not feeling too far at one end, too far at the other, so you can stay pretty stable.
I just go home now on my own and just sob a little bit, and then I look at the mirror and I go, "You're worth it. You're the best." I do that for a little bit, and then I just go to sleep and I wake up the next day, put a brave face in. But
you're doing all right today. Talking of Australia, can't watch. It'll be all right. Somewhere in the middle.
About what's now?
Yeah, where they're at the moment, particularly with what's going to come next summer.
Yeah, I think it's. Obviously I'm a supporter because I'm an Aussie in that regard. And I think that they need to realise soon enough that things aren't like the fundamentals of the game aren't working.
Right.
I'm not talking about the national team. I'm talking about the fundamentals of the game. And they weren't even when I was there. Right, we needed to do things differently. You can see that. You can see that's been coming, and it's challenging. I'm not saying it's easy for the administrators, it's challenging, but it's going to take brave decisions to turn that around.
And are the right people in place to make those decisions? You're far.
I've got no idea, and it's not for me to say that. I was unbelievably honoured to be the coach of the team. To coach my country, and which is something I never thought I'd do, and I want them to do well no matter what.
Yeah.
Like I'm not. There's none of that, and I'm not a person who can judge. Oh, that guy's the right guy. This guy's the right. That lady's a good. I'm sure everyone's got good intentions. It's about making good decisions.
Okay, watch this space. Final question, but it's quite a big one, which is you've been phenomenally successful in rugby, but you've been. Is it fair to say you've been even more successful in business? And can you just give it? How did you get into what it is you do? What is it that you've built?
A fashion brand who wears the same T-shirt every day. We never.
Well, that's right.
Couldn't understand.
No, so it was rugby actually that got me into it. So like I explained to you before, I went and played overseas.
Yeah.
At a young age and kept turning around. And then, like I said, rugby started going pro. I didn't want to go pro, but I wanted to come back to Australia at that time. I don't know what was going on at the time, but would have been mid-90s, 96, 97, around there. But so when I decided not to go back to Europe, because even though it was an amateur game, there happened to be a brown paper bag sitting in my...
full boots.
For
the love of the game, and
exactly.
that brown envelope. Yeah.
We had to eat.
Yeah, got to eat, mate.
Your croissants and your baguette.
You can't put good wishes into your car, do you know what I mean?
Anyhow, I had to get a job, right? If I wanted to, and I never really applied for a job. I had a job and not long out of school with maybe some courier company or something like that, and then I had to get a job. So I looked into job ads. That's when they used to have to look in the newspaper, right? And there was a lady, one of the Colette Diddigan was her name. She was one of Australia's leading fashion designers at the time, and showed in Paris runways. She wanted a business manager, someone who spoke French and Italian, right, because she was mainly export. Right? So I could do that because I'd learned how to speak those languages from playing overseas. The rest, but
line in the CV.
Pretty much. Just hopefully she's not listening. But I've told the story a couple of times. She's a great lady, and pretty much. Well, my cousins had a fashion shop in Oxford Street in Paddo. So what, I made the rest of it from there.
I've been there. I've opened the door. I've looked in there. I'm an expert. Yeah.
And somehow I got the job after a few interviews, and just started learning about the business there. It was an unbelievable business. It really taught me a lot. I was able to play footy at the same time, and then I finished with Colette. Like I left Colette in '99 because I went to start coaching. So I was still playing, and pretty much the same thing that happened when I was playing rugby when I first came from league to play rugby happened for coaching, because I was working with Colette and playing rugby, and then I got a call from Campo one day, and he said, my team in Italy is looking for a coach, Padova, where he played. And I spoke Italian, and I thought, you know what? I never thought about coaching. Yeah. And I thought, sounds like a good holiday. Go up and live near Venice, have a year or two up there.
Your entire career is just trying to get a holiday, trying to get somewhere to go,
and so I went over there.
Tourist board, I think.
I went over there for a year. So now I came back because my father got sick. And when I came back, I ran into an old friend of mine from school who was working for another fashion company. I went there as a CEO there while I started coaching at Randwick as well. There we said, you know what, let's start our own stuff. So we do have a distribution company,
right?
Which is here in London, in Shoreditch, is their head office. She's still going strong, carving it up, and she's a phenomenal Catherine operator in that space. So it's been going since that long now, nearly 20 years.
Wow. And you're distributing all over the world.
We started off, we took a trip to the US for the business we were working for. We said, let's have a little look around here and see what's going on. So we stopped into a few different places on the way. Started off in New York. We went to a denim company there, and then we went to a few different places all the way across to LA. And we sat down in LA, we were having a drink, and said, the first thing we saw looked like good, so we wanted to acquire the distribution rights. Anyway, she had to go back to Australia, so I went back to New York and just knocked on the door and had a huge night out on the drink with the designer, who was just a knockabout American fella. Had a big night out, and he just gave me the whole bag of samples. I told him he had this big network in Australia, which of course we didn't have, you know what I mean?
Spoke French, spoke Italian.
And he brought it back, and they gave us some interesting advice, because obviously it was a brand called Paper Denim and Cloth, which was sort of getting the cutting edge of that sort of sub-luxury market back then. It was $300 or $400 for a pair of jeans even back then. That would have been early 2000s. And they said to us, take these down there. We'll give you all this media and marketing equipment. And anyone that rings you for the first 3 months, don't sell to them. In order to try to make the demand as they... I wasn't sure about that strategy, but that made it easier for us because we were under no pressure. Yeah. And we got ourselves...
Build a network around a network you didn't have,
Yeah. So we got it organised. And then eventually we said to them, look, we've got a big setup in Europe, after a year or two. And they said, okay, yeah. So they gave us a distribution rights to Europe. And we just came up here and set up out of the back of a truck and pretty much. And then got set up, started distributing that and over here. And then that did well. So it gave us a network into all of the department stores and those luxury boutiques that she's still trading with now, with different brands, obviously, as it's moved on, the business. But
you still get involved? Do you still check in, hands-on?
Not really. We use my place in Paris, we use the showroom for the fashion weeks over there, which is coming up, say, next week or so. But I think she's done a great job in that, and that was so good for me to have that, like I said, that independence.
Yeah.
And I think also, mate, for learning about how to manage people as well, like staff. It's very different to, I think a lot of the coaches that get challenged now is because they got to come up and all of a sudden they're rugby coaches. They got to deal with being in charge of medical staff and coaching staff, administrational staff, managers. How do I put all this together? So that leadership piece is not that simple. It's almost a little bit like politicians in that way. They're never really trained to be leaders. They come in their little politicians thing and they get up and all of a sudden they're in power and they got 10,000 staff.
Yeah.
What do I do here? So that whole thing about being involved with different people, different types of people, and then being to talk to them in different ways, I've really been able to. It's helped me in application in sport, and also things about presentation. Going out, going in front of businesses, talking to them, asking for money. From finance, all those types of things that you have to do. They give you the belief that you can say, okay, I can do this, or I can talk to a whole range of different people and still try and get the result I want.
Just as an observation, you might tell me it's nonsense, but it seems like everything you've done with rugby, yes, there's always a real intensity and passion about what you do, but it feels like with having kids, but also these other business, that you realise that it is just a sport and there is more to life. That's the kind of impression I get. It feels like you take things on as a challenge, you enjoy them, you give them everything, but I'd say you're never defined by it. You seem to just kind of understand that there is so much more to life, and when you're in it, it's great, but actually it's not the end of the world. Do you know what I mean? That's the kind of vibe I get.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think I obviously care deeply about it, because I'm also managing the expectations and the wants of a whole lot of people that are playing the game. But I would say it like this: I'm obsessed about rugby, right? Because I love it. I love the competition. Whether it's the union or league or whatever it is. I love the competition and the battle and I just love the whole experience. Because it's given me a lot in my life, right? So about traveling and learning other languages and doing all that. But if that obsession tips the scale like that, then I want to stay balanced. I need to have a whole raft of other things, whether it's business, a different type of interests that I might have, whatever, that then tip the scale back to balance, as opposed to, I just won't be too obsessed and I'll stay balanced. I want to be obsessed with footy on one side and then do other things and around who I am, that then bring that scale back to balance. And I feel like I can then be good at what I'm doing if I've got both sides of the scales leveled up with what I do.
Brilliant. How are you going to get on this year? Where will Leicester be? What's the ambition?
Well,
take each game as it comes, week by week.
No, mate.
We're going to win, mate.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's if you're not here coming to win, then what are you coming to do? Now, I think that's the expectation of all teams. And if I come here and say and try and dodge that issue, well, what example am I giving to my players as well? But not just say, we're coming to win, and no, because there's too much. It's about doing what it takes in the preparation side of the game to show that how much we want to win.
Yeah.
And I think that's the process we go through now, is learning, guys learn about, okay, this is what I feel like it takes for us to then become successful on a day-to-day basis, that then gives us the chance to be competitive on game day. I'll be honest, I've got like sort of zero idea of what to expect come round one. Like, I've never seen the team.
Exeter away, isn't it?
We're going to Exeter, yeah. Never been there. I'm only seeing a lot of the players for the first time now, because I would have only focused on the international players, etc. And they've got some there that are pretty handy, and some guys that I know as well. But I don't know, I'm sort of unsure of the level still, of what. So all I can do is say, right, here's the preparation and I feel will be best suited for our lads, and make sure that I'm preparing for victory.
Yeah.
Right. Not just I'm just going through the motions to prepare the team and get them ready so they can play. And then if that victory doesn't come there, I need to adjust and change again and go or evolve so that I get it towards there. And I feel like that's something I came here for. I want to be a part of that. I want that responsibility.
Don't bet against them. Don't dismount at the help.
No, I think it's interesting. I've always chat to Michael sort of offline every now and then, little messages, but I've never really thought about coaching. But I think every time I spend time with him, I thought, well, you know what? You need an assistant coach to do something. I would want to work with him and go and do something. I think it'd be quite fun to do. I don't think I'd help, and I think I'd probably get fired within 2 minutes and have to go in front of HR. But we'd have a good ride for those 2 weeks I was here.
It would be enjoyable. It'd be a specific type of team. Yeah, he'd be my assistant coach, no doubt about
James
it.
Haskell coaching the Tigers. That really would be hell freezing over.
But I think it's very exciting, and I think actually, like you said, that for me the Premiership will benefit from having checks in. I think the understanding where Leicester can be, the fact they had that glory win in the Premiership. I think there's some really talented players that it'll be really exciting to see how it goes. And I'll be excited to see how you found the Premiership. Somebody's done it all basically in all the different other leagues, to go and see what that's like and catch up mid-season. Go like, is it what you thought it was, or how did you find it?
We shall see. 2 quick bits before we let you go to your travel tavern for your Uber Eats. We were down in Oz.
Yes, we said over the summer, Alex Tins and I went to Australia. We took on some challenges together on Bondi Beach, the MCG, and the Koori Heritage Trust, and met some of the country's amazing wildlife at Wildlife Sydney. It's such a beautiful country with amazing food and wine. What we want to know, Michael, is if you had a day off in Australia, which state, city would you visit, and what would your ideal day off be?
I would go to Ayers Rock. It's got a cultural history that's becoming more and more important to all Australians, not just to Indigenous Australians, and it's a real identification piece for our country.
Fantastic. That's one for all Lions fans next summer. Obviously, that's taking place 2025, but it's a huge decade of green and gold coming up, so go and say g'day to Australia. I'm not sure I did that quite as well as you, but you will have the time of your lives, and we cannot wait to be down there for the Lions tour next summer. We've also got a very little something. Hask, do you want to do the honours on this?
Yes. So we've got a gin called Blackeye Gin that myself, Alex and Mike Tyndall set up. It's just won double gold in San Francisco, but the idea behind it is £1.50 of every bottle sold goes into an injured players fund for men and for women across the rugby landscape, to help in 3 areas like research, make the game safer, risk, kind of help develop safety issues, and also recovery. So when Wasps players went, for example, Barstow or London Irish or Worcester, we'd be there to offer some alternatives to help people with surgery. So every guest that comes on, we give them a bottle. I recommend it goes to the Mediterranean tonic. If you're having a bad day, win or lose, the rules, get on the booze, just have a little one of them. I imagine, yeah.
Very nice. And very good idea, mate, to be able to support the players. That's bonza.
Bonza, yeah. I think you'll really enjoy it. As I said,
it's actually in the Leicester Club shop as well.
They sell it here.
Running low.
I get everywhere, mate. I mean, I'm trying to build an empire like you, but it's not.
We're still slow at the moment.
You might have to take that picture of you off a little branding thing if you want to sell more.
Upset people, but there's a certain housewife who quite likes it. A certain housewife. There's a demographic. A 65-year-old divorcee.
3 of them.
65-year-old divorcees are mad about me.
Good on you. That is Blackeye. Exactly. Available in the Leicester Club shop. Also available on Amazon, Ocado and Master of Malt. And we've got a really exciting listing coming up very soon as well. So grab a bottle if you fancy swapping a beer for a gin and tonic. Thank you so much. That's been one of the most enjoyable hour and a half we have a long time.
Thank you.
Good luck this season. We shall watch with great interest. That is it for today's episode. Thank you for tuning into The Good, the Bad and the Rugby in partnership with Continental Tires. Whether on the rugby field or on the road, safety always comes first, and Continental Tires have got you covered with top safety, grip and performance. That is it. We are off and running. We're at the Underbelly on Tuesday in Soho. If you fancy grabbing tickets, it's all laid out all the way through to the Lions tour next summer. We are there every step of the way. We shall see you soon. But from all of us, thank you again, Michael. Bye for now.